You're listening to the Post-Apocalyptic Media Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Post-Apocalyptic Media Podcast. I'm your host, Shawn, Senior Editor here at Post-Apocalyptic Media, and this is episode number 95. We're almost to 100. I thought maybe we'd be able to make 100 by the end of the year, but it'll probably be in January. But either way, it'll be epic, right? All right, so in this episode, we have a little bit of residue from The Walking Dead still. That finale was so big and it's such a big deal that I still have stuff to talk about with it. And don't think that I'm going to stop talking about The Walking Dead because we still have spin-offs, we have all that stuff, right? So hopefully you're a Walking Dead fan when you're listening to this because I have, a little bit of news left from that. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about something I watched last week. I believe it was last week, maybe the week before. It's a movie called Gold. Now, I don't know. I saw it and I said, I have to talk about this. I think it's really good. And it's kind of questionably post-apocalyptic. I don't know if you've seen it. Let me know what you thought in the comments because I'm always curious to know, what I tend to think that everything I see that's kind of, sci-fi is just the greatest thing ever. So I don't know if other people feel this way, but so this movie Gold has Zac Effron and I really liked it. It's a very, I don't know, it's the kind of movie that you don't really know what's going on at first. Like I said, you don't know if it's post-apocalyptic. You don't know. He does mention that he's going to the compound. And there are hints that it's kind of post-apocalyptic, but they don't come right out and say it. So for that reason, it's not something, that I've written review for or anything like that, like on the site, but I feel like it would probably qualify. What gets me though, is this, when I go to IMDb, it has a 5.4 out of 10 rating. It says there's 9.7 thousand votes. Wow. I'm really disappointed in that because I like the movie a lot. But I like quirkier movies. Like Lobster is one of my favorite movies, and like Punch Drunk Love and stuff like that. Those are great, great movies. Not the best ratings usually on those movies, but oh well. So this movie, let me explain a little bit about it. So it's called Gold, right? Has Zac Effron in it, and he's kind of the main draw, that a lot of people were excited about seeing him on the, on the show, on the movie. And I don't think I think maybe I mentioned this movie before a while back, but I don't think I really talked too in depth about it. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do right now. Even if I did it before, I apologize. I have the memory of a 47-year-old, so that's my excuse. Anyway, it's called Gold, right? It's about gold. It's about Zac Efron is going out to this desert compound and he needs a ride. So, at the very beginning of the movie, he meets up with this other guy who they don't name, there are no names to these people. Actually, on IMDb, they name Zach, they name him Man 1, and the driver, they name Man 2. So he gets this ride from this guy. I don't know how he knows him. I didn't really catch that part. I don't think they really explain it. He's told that this guy will drive him. So they're in this old, like just beat up, it's either like a Nissan or a Toyota little truck, and they're driving through the desert. This truck is all beat up. It's kind of on its last leg, and so they're driving for a long time, like a few days, I guess. And they switch drivers at one point. The other man falls asleep, and so Zac Efron is driving, and the guy tells him don't mess with the air conditioner. Well, he does, and it overheats the truck, right? So they're stranded. While they're trying to figure this out, while the man is working on the truck, Zac Efron walks over. I think he goes to pee or something like that, and he finds this shimmering rock in the desert. I mean, I'm talking desert. I'm talking like, I guess it's like Gobi Desert in China. I guess that's what it is, because they do have kind of signs. They have like Chinese writing here and there, and I think that's what they're trying to get across. Or it might also be just out in the Middle East. but they don't really explain that. So that's not really the important part. So he finds this shimmering rock. He uncovers it a little bit, and he discovers it's big. Like by the time he's kind of digging up out of the sand, he's realizing this thing is like as big as like a basketball. So, I mean, even at that point, it's like one of the biggest gold chunks ever, in history. So he's thinking, this is millions of dollars, right? I mean, I don't know the economy of this of this world, but if it were in today's, terms, it would be probably millions of dollars just by what he found at that point. So he calls the man over. He seems a little reluctant because they haven't been getting along. But he calls the man over. The man sees it. He does a test on it to try to burn it. And it turns out that it is gold. He proves that it is gold. So he's like, okay, we're going to get this out of here. So they start digging, and it turns out to be this giant chunk that's, I don't know, it's probably half the size of their truck. It's probably, maybe half the size of the cab of the truck. And so they try ropes. They try all this stuff. They try pulling it out with the truck. And none of that works, right? They're desperate because they don't want someone else to see them. They're kind of right off the road, and there's nothing to hide behind. There's just open space. So they camp out, and they're talking. And the guy says, the driver, he says, you know what? I know a guy who has some equipment. He's a couple days off from here, and you can go get him. You can go tell him to bring his equipment out here. We'll dig it up. We'll get this thing out of here. And Zac Efron's like, you know what? I think I'm going to stay with the gold. And I think you are going to be the one to do this because you know the guy, right? So, reluctantly the guy, and we get the sense that the driver planned this all along, that he knew that Zac would want to stay with the gold. And so he was kind of reverse psychology, doing that to him, and it worked. So the whole rest of the movie is about, and again, I don't think this is huge spoilers because I'll leave out the biggest spoilers. I don't want to spoil the movie for you, but a lot of this is in the trailer too. So just get that out of the way. So the guy goes to get the equipment, and he leaves a radio, like a satellite radio, so they're able to communicate a little bit. It's a little fuzzy, but they are able to communicate a little bit. So basically the whole entire rest of the movie is Zac Efron dealing with exposure in the desert, dehydration. His skin is just roasting. There's dogs that come at night, and he has to light a fire to keep the dogs back. And it's a lot of, I don't know, he's really going through a lot, and you can tell at some point he's like, is it really worth it? But then no, it's definitely worth it. Definitely. He even builds a little shelter. He finds an old crashed plane, and he takes the parts from it and makes a little shelter. And then he encounters a woman later on who is very, street smart, but I guess desert smart. And she knows he's hiding something. She knows it because he buried the gold back up, but she knows there's something going on. There's a whole thing with that. I won't spoil. And then I won't spoil the ending, but I think it counts as post-apocalyptic. It definitely has that feel, and even the hints, like I said, the hints that it's set in a kind of maybe post-nuclear era or something like that. Anyway, I recommend it. Again, I'm not even telling you half of what, the great parts about the movie, because it really has some great parts. But that's from me. That's my opinion. I might not be normal when it comes to movie preferences, and in other ways too, I guess, right? But take it with a grain of salt because, like I said, IMDb 5.4 out of 10. You might fall into one of the people who watch this and say, what? This is the stupidest movie I've ever seen. When I saw Blair Witch, speaking of movies that are polarizing, I saw Blair Witch in the theater, what was that, 98, 99, something like that. And I remember at the end, again, I won't spoil Blair Witch. If you haven't seen Blair Witch, then I'm sorry. At the end, when it basically ends abruptly, I was like, in my head, I'm like, wow, that was pretty good. That was a good. And then this guy stands up and he goes, that was the stupidest movie I've ever seen. What? I want my money back. He was so mad. And other people are like, yeah, what's going on with this? And I remember just thinking, what? I didn't think it was that bad. It's kind of different. Anyway, that gives you an example of, buyer beware. I watched it. Let's see. I watched it on Hulu. It's available on Hulu. So if you have Hulu, check it out. I don't know. I really liked it. It's quirky. I'd like to talk more, I think, about movies that I watch that I think are off the beaten path. You know what I mean? Like everybody's going to love the new Mad Max and everybody loves Walking Dead mostly. But I like these little like hidden gems. Well, pun intended with gold, I guess. So if I find any of these, I'll be sure to talk about it on the podcast. If you like it or not, right? All right, so let's talk about The Walking Dead. So last episode, I talked about the finale, right? I gave some little bit of spoilers, and I tried to save that to the end, and warned you definitely. I won't give any really well. Okay, let's backtrack. I'll give you a little bit of spoilers. It's been a week. It's been over a week and a half since that episode came out. So I think maybe you've seen it, but if you haven't, I'll just warn you the next few minutes I might give a couple spoilers. So first of all, before I do that though, The Walking Dead, the finale has broken AMC Plus viewership records, which is pretty exciting. I mean, AMC Plus has only been around for two and a half years, right? So that's not, I guess it's been a little over 2 years. So that's not like, a huge accomplishment. 2 years, arguably the streaming service's biggest show is The Walking Dead, right? There's no denying that. So for their finale, for its finale to be considered the biggest viewership in the history of a 2-year-old streaming service, yeah, I get it. I mean, it's kind of, that you would figure that would happen, but it's exciting. They say that there were 3.1 million people who tuned in to give it that highest viewership ever, which, that's pretty exciting just in itself. 3.1 million people. They haven't had 3.1 million people in a long time. The people have kind of teetered off watching this show over the last few seasons. Understandably, it's changed a lot, but this is pretty big news as far as leading up to the spinoffs, right? We have the spinoffs coming out. We have Dead City with Negan and Maggie. We have Daryl Dixon with Daryl. We have a Rick and Michonne spinoff. So, and I think that one I don't think is named yet, but we have those three big ones, I'd say. We also have Fear the Walking Dead still going strong. And I think, I'm not sure, I don't know if World Beyond is still going, but anyway, and Tales of the Walking Dead too. That's supposed to have another season, the anthology series. So, this definitely speaks well for the future of the franchise and the future of that Walking Dead universe, right? So it's pretty exciting. So this last episode is called Rest in Peace, and it had some, some pretty, I don't know, I would say it kind of finished off a few questions we had, but it also started new questions. It started new things where you're like, oh, that's a thing. So now we have to look forward to that. Now, I don't think it's any real spoiler to say, we know about these spinoffs. We know Daryl survived. We know Negan and Maggie survived. And we know that Rick and Michonne survived, right? And I think that because of the spinoffs. So I think that to even say that, that they are in this final episode is probably not a huge spoiler. Although the fact that, spoiler alert, I'll give you a second. The fact that Rick and Michonne are actually seen in this final episode is huge, right? So I think to get to that point where, people have been clamoring to see Rick again, and here we are. We're back to seeing Rick. So it's of course it's a big deal. Of course it's going to get huge ratings. And I think once the word spread that Rick was in this final episode, I think, the viewership of that has gone up after that too. So even that 3.1 million, I'm sure has gone higher since then. I'm sure it's not just 3.1 total. But That's good news. Definitely good news for the franchise. And also, I wanted to talk about this thing that Bill, he writes for the site, Bill Kennedy. He also wrote, he pointed this out, that there was this thing on Reddit about an alternate ending. There was an alternate ending for this finale episode. Now, I think it's okay. So I think there could have been two alternate endings, basically. One of them would have been the one where Carol and Daryl left together, because of course they were supposed to have that spinoff together. I think that would be a minor alternate ending. It just would have involved Carol going with Daryl instead of Daryl riding off on his own. But this alternate ending, I don't know where this came from. Some people said that this was confirmed by some insiders, things like that. So I'm just going to read what it says. This is the exact quote from the leak, quote unquote. I'm making air quotes. It says, after Daryl rode off, we cut forward to the Freedom Parkway outside Atlanta, where the iconic shot of Rick rode down from the pilot. You see an ethanol-modified van with a young woman and a man in the front seats in their 20s. And through the scene, we come to realize it's adult RJ and Judith. Of course, RJ is the son of Rick and Michonne, and Judith is, Judith is. Other adult versions of the kids are in the back: Coco, Gracie, etc. Okay, so it's the kids, all the kids who have been a big part of this last season, right? We focused quite a bit on them, especially Judith. And now they're adults, right? So far, so good. So far, it makes sense. It makes sense that this is the ending that they would have chosen, but they didn't. Okay, it goes on and says, they're out there looking to escort any survivors back to their communities, continuing the legacy of their parents. As RJ speaks over the radio, he finishes with, "If you can hear me, answer back. This is Rick Grimes." Now, RJ, of course, the R stands for Rick, so that is his name. So he's calling himself Rick instead of RJ, I guess. But here's what's important about that, because that is the same line that Rick said in the pilot. You know what I mean? So we're kind of going, we went back when Daryl was carrying Judith and running with her. It was kind of a harken back to when Rick was running with Carl after he got shot. And it was, so there was a lot of nostalgia in that last episode where they would go back and kind of show, previous things to, get us fired up for it all ending, right? So that was an important line because it was something that his dad, RJ Sr., well, RG Sr., Rick Grimes Sr., said in the pilot. So then it says, then we end with the voice of a survivor answering back, "Hello." I don't know. I think that would have been great. It would have, to get RJ, well, first of all, to get all the kids as adults would have been great. To get RJ as saying his name is Rick, I think a lot of people would have said, wait a minute, is that what you meant by Rick Grimes is going to be back in the show at the last episode? And it probably, I don't know, maybe that's why they decided not to go with that. It maybe would have made a few people angry, but they could have shown this after the Rick and Michonne stuff, definitely. But yeah, so it ends with the voice of a survivor answering back, "Hello." So that gives us hope. That gives the open-ended, kind of branch that we know there is more people out there. There's more people to rescue, right? That's kind of been the underlying plot of this entire show, rescuing groups of people who need to be rescued, I think it would have been great. The ending we got where everyone pretty much rode off into the sunset, except for, Rick kind of didn't. And then they went to the ending, which showed Judith and RJ. I think it was Judith and RJ. It was Judith and somebody. Oh, it might have been Herschel. Was it Herschel? I don't know. But anyway, Judith was there, and they were looking over a field, and this is, a year later, and that was great. But I feel like if they would have worked this in at the very, very, very end, it would have been pretty cool. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think it would have been a welcome ending. What do you think? Let me know. write in the comments. Let me know what you think, if that would have been a good ending or not. All right, let's stop talking about The Walking Dead for a minute, right? I'm done with spoilers, by the way, if you're scanning through this and trying to find spoilers. I'm done with spoilers. The only real spoiler I had was I won't say it again. Okay, let's see. All right, next little bit of news is about a new game called Starship Troopers Extermination. Starship Troopers, of course, is very post-apocalyptic, fighting, giant bugs in the movie. Well, this game is said to come out as a squad-based co-op FPS. And you have 3 playable classes. You have the assault, defense, and support. It seems to focus, very heavily on the squad-based part of the description. So you have, as you can imagine, it's fighting giant bugs. So it's a battle. It's a war type game, right? I sound like my parents' war type game, and it has 12. So you have 12 players working together in 4-person squads. That's pretty cool. I mean, most co-op games are 4v4. This is 4v4v4, right? So that's pretty cool. I really like that aspect of it. It's being developed by Off-World Industries, and of course they've done co-op shooters before. There was Squad, which came out about two years ago. It was in Steam Early Access for a while, but yeah, it came out 2 years ago. 2020, I think, is when it came out. So when you look at they already have a track record of making games like this. So kind of fitting in that Starship Troopers skin, I think, is it's promising, right? I'm a pretty big fan of the movie. I haven't played it. I haven't read the books or played any other games or anything. I know Derek is a huge fan, way bigger fan than I am. So this was something that he was really excited about. But it's supposed to come out. Starship Troopers Extermination is supposed to come out on early access on Steam sometime in 2023, next year, right? There's this article that I'm looking at PC Gamer, and they actually have some screenshots. It looks very, very cool. Looks like a really great, promising game, definitely. All right, so from here, where do we go? We're almost to the end of the year, almost the end of 2022. So at the site, we're ramping up for a couple things. One of them is our writing contest will be ending in the middle of December. So we have a couple weeks on that. We have been absolutely overwhelmed with entries in that. I'm talking about over 100, which is, it's not quite like, I know Writer's Digest just had a contest, and they say they had 2,400 entries. That's crazy. But this, we have a lot of entries, and I'm very excited about it. So we should be announcing, toward the end of the year, we should be announcing a winner for that. There will be a top 3 for second and third place, and then we'll have some honorable mentions, because there are just so many great stories, really. It's pretty impressive, I'd say. So we have that, and we also have the end of the year Boomy Awards. We have our 2023 Boomy Awards, which is going to be, well, actually, I think it'll still be 2022, because it'll be the end of the year. So we have our 2022 Boomy Awards, which will be our favorites. We're all going to vote. Everyone at the site is going to vote on their favorite movies, TV shows, comic books, fiction, video games, all kinds of the different categories like we've been doing for the last 2 years, and getting them all together and voting on them. So this is an exciting time where we get to go back and think of, what's been released this year. What are our favorite things? Of course, there are so many. Once you start thinking of your favorites, you're like, wow, oh yeah, there's also this one that released. So it's going to be fun. So we have that to look forward to in the coming weeks as we wrap up the year. So we have a few good episodes coming up. Those will probably be at the end of the year into January. That's when we're going to have those. So I am looking forward to that. This is my absolute favorite time of the year, not only for the holidays, but also for, talking about my favorite stuff from the end of the year, right? So expect that to be coming up here, and that'll do it for me. This is a short one, huh? Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure you stay alive out there and always be ready for the big one. Bye-bye.